Hello, welcome to this episode of How to Be a Better Speaker. Now, I want to pick up on a topic I covered around 3 months ago, building blocks of talks. So we were talking about the 3-minute talk. I want to cycle back to that and build on that, particularly as a few things that have come up in the last week. Building blocks, most of us refer to it as Lego, like tissues, Kleenex, and I grew up with a Hoover instead of a vacuum cleaner. There are brand names. Okay, so we're gonna lump on Lego, and there's an extra special reason for talking about Lego building blocks for your talk, because Lego, the word Lego, is actually Greek for I speak. How's that for tying in a few significant things together? So where are we going with this Lego today? Well, I want you to think about, as I said, pulling up on the stuff we talked about 3 months ago. That was particularly looking at the 3-minute talk in relation to if you have a podcast episode that you are guesting on, and they ask you a question, and you could give lots and lots of different answers because you have a wealth of knowledge, and you're going to pick one, remember? And then you illustrate that point with a story. Story is the oldest form of passing on information. I was on a summit that will be aired next week, and we were talking about the power of story and how I put up a campfire, and within minutes people will be starting to tell stories. It's embedded in our DNA. We tell stories, we pass on information through story. So I want to pull in the storytelling element and the 3-minute talk. Okay, so let's build those blocks together and see what comes out of it. Well, I would invite you to think about it being a beautiful construction in 3 minutes. Any point that you want to make. Have you got a bank of stories that you can pull on, ones that are going to be relevant to that particular audience? This is where it is crucial to know who the audience is. Are you speaking to farmers, for instance, in which case you would give a farming related example? Are you speaking to bankers? Give a money related banking example. Start to think, how can I make this point in a way that is relevant to this audience? Now, that requires you to do a little bit of homework, a bit of due diligence ahead of time, which is all good practice anyway. But think about, and I would invite you to start thinking about this now, because you are applying for podcasts. So you know who you're applying to. Check out their audience, listen in, find out, do your research on the host and on the audience. And then think about, stories could I tell? Now, some of them may be your own personal experiences. Some of them may be your clients' experiences. Some of them may be those wonderful experiences that you conjure up in your head. It doesn't matter. The point is, you have a story to share that illustrates your point. What I was saying on the summit, I'm going to give a bit of a spoiler here, is that think about to when we were small. All those fairy stories we were told, they all had a point. They all carried a point. They all carried a lesson, if you will, which if you'd said it straight out to your average 2, 3, 4-year-old, they'd have gone, nah. Not doing it felt confronting, or it would have gone over their head. But by doing it in story form, and if it's a really good story, the children want to hear it again and again and again and again and again. You get bored, but they don't. My point is, those layers of understanding are coming in the little person. It's those layers of understanding that you are building with your 3-minute illustrated point? Are you getting how important this is? The art of storytelling, thinking about and creating a story bank. How can you illustrate your most important points? Go through the things that you are likely to be asked, because you may have even been asked, what do you want me to ask you? If you have that sort of a podcast where they simply say, feed me the questions and I'll ask them to you, and that therefore you shine, you've really got it made, because you can engineer the conversation and have those stories ready. Now, if you have a podcast host who is having an organic conversation with you, a bit like we're doing now, then that is not going to be so cut and dried. So you don't know what's coming up in conversation, because it can go all over the place. So this is where I invite you to have a bank of stories that you can pull on. Now, I know a number of people who, when we're talking about story banks, they have a story tin. A tin with, they put some props in it, because then, particularly the people I'm thinking of are keynote speakers. They're people who speak from a live stage. They pull out something to illustrate their talk. Now, you can do that on a podcast as well, particularly if it's a point that you make over and over and over again. I have, not that I've got it here because I've only just moved in, I have a little cutout face with an even smaller cutout eye that I encourage people to stick over a camera so they know where to look when they're doing a live piece to camera, or even a recorded like this one. So that's a little bit of something that I can produce, a prop, if you will, but I've always got a story behind it. And the story with that one is, how much do we take notice of people more when they're looking at us, because we feel they're speaking directly to us, rather than if we're having a Zoom conversation with people side by side and somebody's down here and you're looking at them, which is great because you're giving them eye contact. Well, you think you are, because that's where the picture appears on your screen. Whereas actually, to give them eye contact, you're looking straight ahead at the camera. Little illustrated points like that. So what is it that you regularly talk about? What are those points that you want to illustrate? And do you have a number of different ways you can explain it, depending on the different audiences that you may be speaking to? If you have props, great, have them to hand, have them ready, and make sure if you're doing it on a recorded summit, a Zoom room like this, that it falls within the space of your Zoom camera, with your Zoom window even, and also where you position it in the window. Because if you have a green screen, great. If, like me, you don't, because I'm traveling, and you move very, very quickly. Okay, bra strap showing. My point is that you can ghost very easily. So whatever you're going to produce as an illustration, for instance, my glasses, my phone, we get that one, then where does it show that it's actually going to be in shot and not in shot? Okay, so again, a bit of an illustrated point there. Have your stories ready to illustrate the points you want to make. I invite you to think about that ahead of time, so you're not scrabbling around for them on camera. Now, they may come up with something that is totally left of center, and you think, whoa, how am I going to answer that? That's where you trust your intuition to come up with something that is credible at the time. My point here is, have a lot of stories ready. Now, that planning, that preparation is vitally important, because those are illustrations that you can use not only on a podcast, not only on an interview, not only with keynotes, even in conversations. If somebody says, what is it you do? Speaking. Oh, I couldn't possibly speak. And that's an introduction, a way in for you to tell a story about how you got speaking. Do you see where I'm going with this? The Lego blocks, the I speak blocks. Marry that with your story. Plenty of stories to illustrate a point. One story per point. You can have multiple stories to illustrate that point, but you only produce one at a time. It can be about an experience that you've had personally. It can be an experience about a client of yours. It can be an experience about somebody you've made up, or you can borrow other people's examples. My point is, have your stories to illustrate your points to that audience for your Lego I Speak blocks. Do let me know how you found this and whether this is something practical that you can use. Pop it in the comments. And if you want to talk to me a bit further about this, DM me. Let's talk. Let's Lego. Bye from me.